The Young Turks' Anna Kasparian is facing accusations of transphobia online after tweeting this yesterday. Quote, "I'm a woman. Please don't ever refer to me as a person with a uterus, birthing person, or person who menstruates. How do people not realize how degrading this is? You can support the transgender community without doing this. SHIT."
Yeah, I think she speaks for a lot of people when she says that. The terms birthing person and people who menstruate and all that crap I think they're just terrible ways to refer to people. I don't like them at all. What? You're looking at me like you're going to push back.
Well, here's the issue. If it is, of course, everybody's right to not want to be referred to those terms. I personally,
they're so clinical.
I personally have never been referred to by any of those terms, so it strikes me as a little odd to kind of extemporaneously want to declare to the world what you don't want to be called when no one apparently is calling you that.
No one. It was in the Biden budget, used birthing people.
Again, I don't know why I would be triggered by something that is said in a budget document that I have not read and will never read. But look, if Anna Kasparian doesn't want to be called that, that's her right. I think the question becomes, we all have a lot of preferences, stated preferences in the world that we don't go on Twitter to announce to large audiences or really make a part of our personal identity.
What do you mean? Of course we do. That's what Twitter's for.
No, I have 1,000,001 opinions that are nobody's business, and if I state them out loud, it's because I have a political agenda, frankly, that I'm trying to address. And I think that the reason that Anna Kasparian is getting pushback, whether or not I would characterize it as a transphobic statement, is a different question, and it's frankly not really up to me to weigh in on that. But the reason that people are expressing pushback is because they're wondering why, when so much energy is being devoted by the right to passing actual legislation that prevents trans people from getting access to medical care for living their lives the way that they want to do, one would center their own self and say that the issue here that should draw some degree of focus is whether on some budgetary document somewhere or some healthcare form somewhere a term is used that I personally just don't like.
I don't agree with that. You can be upset about a lot of different things at once. Right. If all you do is inveigh against the terminology or something, then maybe one would conclude that that's all you care about. But I'm sure, I don't watch the Young Turks regularly enough to know, but I'm sure Anna and the other hosts have probably criticized a lot of Republican measures, including the ones you're talking about, that I myself have criticized.
Yeah,
it's
maybe
okay to criticize them and also say, but look, the terms birthing person and all the rest are pretty, are not great terms. A lot of people don't like them. I see why people don't like them. I think they're very clinical and very
oh my God, a clinical term. Oh no, it's hurting me. I'm like melting like the Wicked Witch. Look, she cannot like it. And other people can think it's stupid to prioritize hand-wringing. Look, here's
Are we supposed to empower people to be referred to as the way they want to be referred to? And lots of women are saying we want to be referred to as women.
That's exactly what I was going to say. This is deeply hypocritical because there are women who have... There are women who are saying, I want to fight for the right to be referred to by my chosen name, not my dead name, to be called, to have used terms like cis and trans, to use terms like birthing woman because I am someone who maybe is a cis woman, but postmenopausal or pre-menstruation, or there are words that are invented to cover real people who exist, including people who no longer identify as women, but who can biologically give birth because they were born
If they no longer identify as women, we call them trans men.
Right.
We have this all worked out.
And sometimes, I'm sorry, this is like so niche that it's ridiculous that this is such a big part of the national conversation, but sometimes trans men get pregnant and they prefer to be called birthing women. And I don't, when someone like Anna Kasparian tweets something like this, it is not just what her personal preference is. It implicates whether or not the birthing person, the trans man who is giving birth, has the right to want to be called that. Yes, a clinical term in a clinical setting like the hospital where he's trying to give birth. Now, you can think that that person is dumb, that trans men shouldn't exist, that trans men should give birth.
I'm not saying any of those things.
I don't think that you do, but a lot of people do feel that way, and frankly, that's what's underpinning their frustration with the use of those terms. It has nothing to do with me.
I don't think inclusivity should not be about erasing people who fall into the traditional categories and who are proud to proclaim themselves as men and or women.
I think that that's fine.
You can use trans men,
and I completely respect
trans women to describe people who fall into those categories. That's fine.
Anna Kasparian saying a term birthing person is, no one's ever going to call her a birthing person. She's a woman who was born a woman, who identifies as a woman, who's been very clear that she identifies as a woman. There's no world in which she's ever going to be somewhere.
I know, Harvard Medical School might describe her as such, because I'm reading they have a whole article on.
So again, the fact that someone uses the term somewhere in the world is not the same thing as Anna Kasparian going into her gynecologist's office and them calling her a birthing woman. If that happens, I think that she can object and say that I feel that undermines my femininity and it undermines my status as a cis woman, and she can have that feeling.
Yeah.
But in a world where there's legislation being passed, and the whole thrust of our legal system is to deny trans people the right to even be trans, to focus on these kind of. Wait a minute, let me just finish this. The focus on this, I'm telling you why people are upset. This is not. No one's arguing that Anna Kasparian needs to be blocked from Twitter. I mean, maybe somebody is, but I certainly am not. Nobody. The point here isn't whether she should have the right to say this. The point is what the obvious implication of her coming out and saying this is. And look. She is making a stand. She wants to get the sympathy of people who similarly have an objection with that term. And a lot of people, and you can see it in the quote tweets of who's quote tweeted her and boosted her, Matt Walsh and Candace Owens and people like that, who have very much said that they don't believe that trans people should exist. They don't think that transgenderism should exist. They don't think that these people should be allowed to have any access to rights and privileges. And if Anna Kasparian is comfortable with people who are against these terms, not because they're cis women and they feel like it's weird and cringy and not representative of their life, but because they actually don't think that trans women should exist, having sympathy with her argument, then that's fine. And that's completely fair, and she can do that. But to act kind of surprised that people are going to object, people who are leftists, who are very much committed as a priority to trans rights, that you want to take this frolic and detour down this linguistic path that validates so many conservative arguments. I mean, you can't be surprised by that reaction. That's all.
But how is it any different than a trans person tweeting, let's say a trans woman saying, "Don't ever refer to me as a man, I am a trans woman"?
The difference is, if a trans person tweeted, "I don't think cis women should ever refer to themselves as women," that's objectionable. Mm-hmm. That is the equivalent of what Anna Kasparian is doing.
What if they just said, "Don't refer to me that way," which is what Anna said. Don't refer to me that way.
That's fine.
Yeah, well,
and
that's what Anna did.
You're gonna get exact, because it's absurd. It's like if I went on the internet and said, "Don't refer to me as an elephant." Like at a certain point, you are creating, you are manifesting, you are inventing scenarios that don't really exist just to be mad at them. And again, like I said, if Anna Kasparian if she said this statement in the context of, "I went to the gynecologist, and my gynecologist who knows me for years and has been referring to me as Anna Kasparian and knows that I identify as a woman, suddenly started saying, let me get my birthing person calipers out and start doing this pap smear." And I thought it was weird and cringy, and I asked her not to do it. And she said, "No, I'm going to only refer to you as a birthing person for the rest of all time, despite your stated preferences." I would say that was goofy and ridiculous, and you have a right to complain about that. But as far as
I'm not going to rule out the possibility that someone did use this term with her because she's upset about it and is expressing that she doesn't like that. I validate people's desire to be referred to as the way they want to be preferred. I'm very skeptical that is what's happening here. And the examples that you kept raising, very notably, were not Anna Kasparian having experienced her identity being invalidated, which I think is a fair thing to complain about. But the idea that abstractly somewhere in some government document, these terms have been used, and somehow that causes Anna Kasparian psychic harm, such that she feels like they need to go on the internet and proclaim that she's against these terms. It's her right. She did it. And people are going to feel differently about it, and that's what it is to have an opinion in a free country, and now she has to live with that. But you also can't turn around and tell people not to be offended by what seems to be a choice to draw a line in the sand and show a certain amount of support for arguments that are being made by very bad faith actors that these terms have no place. The terms obviously have a place. I don't agree that this is showing support for any sort of far-right notions at all, but... 10
years from now, I will not be a menstruating woman. Do you know what I mean? And 30 years ago, I was not a if we're gonna say it's all about science and all about these clinical terms on one end, I am a woman because I menstruate, then you have to actually use the science consistently. A ton of women on this earth do not menstruate for various reasons. A ton of women on this earth cannot give birth for various reasons. And there are people on this earth, whether or not you agree with it, who identify as male, who can and do give birth. And either you think it's perfectly reasonable for them to...
And the term for them is trans men.
Yeah.
Yeah, so no issue.
No, the issue is the reason it's used on these forms is because people don't know, doctors' offices don't know if a trans man or a cis woman is coming in to give birth. So to use the most broad language possible, because they're not coming up with forms and printing intake forms on a person-to-person basis, is to use the most broad language. Now, you can say that that's a silly choice given how few trans men exist, whatever. Then make that argument. But it's obvious why those terms are being used, to be broad and inclusive when you're not dealing with an individual case-by-case basis. Like, hi, Anna Kasparian, I'm your gynecologist, and now I'm randomly going to refer to you as a birthing woman. That's not the context of these terms.
Yeah. All right, well, we got to go. They're telling us we got to wrap. We got a guest waiting. We'll have more Rising right after this.